Thank you, everybody, for coming to the ng-conf keynote. Welcome, welcome. And we're just happy you're here. You're a cool person just for showing up. Are our slides up? They are up. So I am Jeremy Elbourn. I am the tech lead for Angular at Google.
And I'm Minko Gechev. I lead DevRel and product for Angular.
Yeah, and we are going to start off by celebrating the fact that this is the 10th ng-conf. Yeah. I know it says volume 9 down here on the podium. That's because it's 0 indexed. And it's really incredible that there's been a decade of the Angular community converging here in Salt Lake City to learn, grow, and enjoy each other's company. This conference also means a lot to me because it is my 10th ng-conf. That is right. I have been to every single one. And yeah, my very first conference talk was at ng-conf in 2014. Look at him up there, basically a child reading directly from the slides. But I think I've come a long way since then. Over the course of these 10 ng-confs, I have given a total of 8 different talks, including the one I'm giving right now. And this is my first time being involved with the keynote, which is really exciting. I can honestly say that there has never been a better time to be giving an Angular keynote.
Really happy to be giving the keynote today with you, Jeremy. ng-conf has been taking a really special place in my heart and also in my professional life as well. Back in 2016 was my first ng-conf, and I got to speak about the tool that I built in my spare time in Sofia, which the Angular team introduced in the Angular CLI for analyzing applications called Colorizer. I also got to publish my first book.
Yeah, are you autographing that book?
Yes. Ferdinand, thank you very much for making me feel special that day. Well, after that, August 22nd, 2016 came, just a couple of months later. And the team released Angular version 2.0.0 RC5, which introduced ng modules and made my book completely outdated. Fast forward to ng-conf 2017.
Oh, yeah. Look at that little smooth baby face he was up there.
Yeah, the baby face had to write a second book with ng modules this time. So in 2018, I joined the Angular team with one mission: to get rid of ng modules and make my first book up to date again. Well, it didn't happen. This pull request didn't land. It, in fact, took us many months of discussion to figure out how to make this happen, how to make ng modules optional. We went through a lot of discussions, a lot of designs, and finally we graduated optional ng modules from developer preview in version 15. We're happy in version 16 that people can create new applications that are standalone by default with optional ng modules by using the Angular CLI.
Yeah, so your book is up to date again.
Wow. Almost there. We just didn't get a few property names right.
Yeah, so knowing that this is the 10th ng-conf has made us a bit introspective and thinking about, 10 years is a long time to be involved with anything, right? It's a long time to work on anything. And we ask ourselves, why are we still working on this? Why are we still engaged with the Angular community and hitting the conference circuit and, doing open source? And, we landed on a handful of reasons. For one, it is really fun and challenging.
Definitely really fun. The web platform is probably the fastest moving platform for developers out there. We have new standards, or a new proposal every other month or so. This environment just has so much rapid innovation. Sometimes it's exhausting to follow everything along, but it is mostly exciting.
Yeah, and this past year in particular has been especially great because we've been able to do a lot of really fun and deep design work on brand new features for all Angular developers.
Yeah, and this made it really fun to be part of the Angular team, and also being part of the larger JavaScript community, building so many cool new libraries.
Yeah.
Meta frameworks.
Yeah, and we are truly grateful to have such an engaged, positive, supportive community of Angular developers, and it is a sincere joy to be able to talk to you, whether it's here in person at ng-conf, online in the chat of our live streams, or even in YouTube comments.
And this community builds a lot of applications that sometimes show up in surprising ways.
Yeah, so it's really satisfying for me when I come across an Angular application in the wild. So for example, I discovered my City of Seattle utilities billing page is an Angular app. My mortgage servicer is an Angular app. My home and auto insurance is an Angular app. So Angular isn't just paying my bills, it's also providing those bills.
There are literally thousands of businesses and enterprises who bet on Angular daily. Our friends from Cisco, for example, they have hundreds of engineers using Angular for critical products for their business that are spanning across hundreds of thousands of lines of code.
Yeah, and Minko, we work at Google, so the word of the year is AI. Are there any AI experiences out there built with Angular?
Yeah, I heard about this Bard app, which is the official chatbot of Angular, of Google, built with Angular, the UI specifically.
Yeah. So all of this, the fun, the challenge, the community, the pride at seeing Angular in the wild, all of this funnels into and drives our goal.
Which is to make it easier for developers to deliver web applications with confidence.
Yeah, so enough of the reflection about why we work on Angular. We know that you're here to hear how we're going to live up to this goal and what we've been up to lately. So the projects we've been working on in the recent past and into the near future, they kind of fit into two rough buckets. Things that are about improving the developer experience for Angular developers building applications, and projects that are aimed towards improving and making it easier to make performant web applications. So let's start off by talking about performance.
Well, performance has been in the core of Angular since the original designs. The Angular's runtime was designed to be very well optimized for the JavaScript virtual machine with many practices in there, for example, enabling better inline caching with monomorphism. And these are a lot of very micro optimizations that make everything really fast on a component level. Well, but change detection is global. Currently, Zone.js, it works great, but it needs to check your entire component tree every time when the browser's microtask queue is empty, which sometimes makes you run change detection more frequently than you have to. People are using onPush to just skip entire component subtrees and make things faster, but there might be a better way.
Yeah, if Angular had more fine-grained knowledge about where the data lives and how it flows through your application, it could do a lot less work. In a more reactive system, Angular would only have to check the specific components where it knows that the data has changed.
So the team explored the reactivity space in depth. We wanted to compare different approaches in the context of Angular and see which one fits the framework best. We looked at hooks. We looked at compile time transforms that enable runtime reactivity because, well, we have been having a compiler for a while. And we also looked at signals. After a lot of investigation, a lot of prototypes, and a lot of discussions within the team, we decided that the best reactivity pattern in the context of Angular is signals. The way signals work, you're going to take your data model and you're going to wrap it in a signal. When you want to access this data model directly in your template, you're going to call the getter function. This is going to provide information to Angular in which part of your template you're using the specific value. When you want to change the value of the signal, you're going to invoke the set function, which is going to notify Angular that something has changed and probably it needs to detect for changes.
Yeah, and here, because the framework is tracking the reads and the writes of these signals, it knows exactly where those reads and writes are taking place, and it can much more narrowly check for changes and keep the DOM up to date so that it can do a lot less work and make it easier for you to avoid making the framework do that extra work.
This fine-grained reactivity is fascinating, and you can learn more about signals in this small demo app by the engineering director in Core Developer Web, Sarah Drasner, which is just a small app here where you can see what are the main concepts of signals. If you want to learn more about signals, you can check the angular.io/guide/signals page.
Yeah.
And we're really excited to share that signals are in developer preview in version 16, and we would really love to hear your feedback and your experience using them. so you can make this experience better.
Yeah. And signals are not a new idea in the web ecosystem. Vue, Preact, Solid.js have all done a ton of innovation in the reactivity space, and we've drawn a huge amount of inspiration from their hard work.
We definitely want to give also special kudos to Ryan Carniero for his deep insights in the reactivity space, specifically around signals, and also for all the engaging and interesting conversations that we had together, the team.
And we also want to thank all of our community members who have been involved in the feedback process as we've worked on signals. That includes our Google developer experts, our GDEs, and the library authors for these state management libraries who have been chatting with us about signals from before we even published the request for comments, the RFC, and giving us really valuable feedback that have guided its evolution.
So signals are a great tool that enables developers to write fast code that is running in the browser. However, for users, it is also critical to have applications that load really fast. One of the biggest improvements that we did in this space over the past year has been hydration. It enables clients to reuse DOM without re-rendering it from scratch once it has been server-side rendered. One of the first applications that experimented with hydration was the app by the Angular JD Michael Hladky, the Movies app, which is part of the Taste.js initiative.
Yeah, so how does this Movies app perform on Lighthouse, Minko?
Easily 100 out of 100.
Even on mobile?
Well, we ran some tests on mobile, specifically with web page speed tests, and we discovered that there are some opportunities for improvement there, specifically around the largest contentful paint and the cumulative layout shift. Both of these metrics, though, they could be improved easily just by adding hydration to your application.
Yeah, and what I really like about this hydration feature is that it's almost a no-op for existing server-rendered applications. All of the complexity is encapsulated in just a few lines that you add to your application, import, provide client hydration, and use it in your providers during application bootstrap. You're good to go. Hydration is available today in developer preview as of Angular version 16. In the early test of this Movies app, we saw the largest contentful paint improve by about 700 milliseconds and completely eliminate cumulative layout shift in that app.
The Movies app, to make sure it is fast, it is also using the highly optimized image directive that we developed together with the Chrome Aurora team. You can find it here. The selector that matches it is the ng-src attribute. It takes completely all the guesswork out of image loading for you. We also worked with the incremental static regeneration by Gechev, which is integrated in the Movies app and makes it faster. But to make sure that when you deploy your application, you're following all best deployment practices, we collaborated with Firebase to enable deployment of Angular applications with their new framework-aware deployment. It is still in early public preview, but you can still deploy client-side rendered applications, server-side rendered applications, and also pre-rendered applications.
Yeah, and on the topic of Firebase, at last year's ng-conf, if you happen to have been here, you may have heard a lot about Angular's optimized image directive that was in progress at the time. It really does streamline image best practices, especially loading from CDNs. And we're super happy a year later to see developers not only adopting this feature, but platforms like Firebase providing integration for serving optimized images with Angular Fire and Firebase hosting.
I definitely love all these integrations because they make deployment and making applications faster very easily. Well, another area of improvement we have been working on was to make our server-side rendering solution available in other JavaScript environments, not only in Node.js. One of the main pieces of work that made this possible was actually a community contribution by Matthew Rigler, which enabled fetch backend for the HTTP client.
Yeah, and thank you so much to Matthew for contributing this feature, and also to everybody else who has sent PRs to Angular over the past year and even further back. We really, really appreciate the community engagement and the submission of PRs. It really drives us to, really love open source as part of what we love about working on Angular.
So that's making the Angular server-side rendering solution agnostic from the platform that it is running on, for example, Node.js, made it possible for us to run it in an edge worker, which is a really popular pattern right now in the JavaScript community. It enables you to render your application in the closest location to the user possible. So we collaborated with Cloudflare to enable such deployments automatically through their CLI. We're one of the first frameworks that they partner with, and you can try their CLI right now. That's the command that you can use. Once you deploy your application, though, you're opting into their smart placement. That is going to figure out the best location for a server-side rendering process possible. It is going to first try to render the closest location to the user, but if your application is making some API requests or talking to a database, for example, it may move your application to be closer to the data store so that it can speed up queries. You can learn more about the advancements in server-side rendering over the past couple of months in the talk by Jessica and Mark tomorrow at 3:10 p.m.
Yeah, definitely don't miss this one, right? This may be one of my all-time favorite speaker duos.
Sorry to interrupt.
Jessica, no, your talk is tomorrow. We just talked about it. I know we said your name, but like...
Giving the presentation right now.
I know, but sorry, I've been a little bit lazy about something and kind of deferred the work until just now. Do you mind if I just use this laptop since you've got it here?
You mean the laptop we're using to give the keynote?
Yeah, I
There are a lot of
conveniently
laptops
left
out
my
there.
laptop up in my room and just figured this was here. So
Yeah.
it'll just take a second. So
What a wildly unexpected thing to happen.
All right. Actually, I hate touchpads. Can I use this real quick?
Sure, yeah.
Awesome.
Sure.
Awesome.
Stay.
Okay. All right. The RFC has been published.
Okay, so are you telling me you just published an RFC right now on stage at this moment with this laptop that is also presenting slides?
Yes. I totally did this live on stage. Yes. And please defer your applause until the end. So.
I mean, I get, like, while you're here, do you want to just, like, talk about it a little bit?
I mean, I guess I could. Since I'm here, why not? So the RFC I just posted is about a brand new declarative deferred loading template syntax that we've been working on, which will enable you to specify which part of your template you'd like to load lazily. The framework will extract the segment of the template and all of its transitive dependencies as a separate bundle, which will load lazily and then prefetch on a specific condition or trigger. So in the example above, we're going to eagerly download and hydrate only the components outside of the defer block. In this case, the app and nav components, and everything else is going to be loaded later. So this uses a brand new template syntax, and since we haven't fully finalized the design on that yet, let's look at an early syntax that we're going to be refining over the next few weeks. In this template here, we have 3 blocks. We have the main part of the defer template that will be lazy loaded when it enters the viewport. You can actually see the on viewport at the top there. There's also the loading indicator, which is right here, which is something that you can specify declaratively. And then there's lastly the error block, which would be displayed if the deferred loading somehow fails. This concept may remind you of React's lazy and suspense or Vue's async components. It has some similar elements, and there's some different trade-offs to it. But we're really happy and excited about the ideas here. The Angular defer block is declarative, and it does not invoke any JavaScript by default. It has built-in declarative triggers like viewport and hover and interaction, and they make the defer block super powerful, and you won't have to do anything extra to make this work. Angular will do all of that heavy lifting for you. There's so much more in the RFC, so please take a look after the keynote, though. Okay, you no longer need to defer your applause. So you see, I just triggered the condition in which the applause happened.
Yeah, that's how it works.
All
Very
right.
cool feature.
I think that's all I had, so back to you guys.
Thank you.
Sorry for the interruption.
Yeah. Did you
expect
It won't
this?
happen again.
No, completely unexpected.
And
You know,
these slides?
if you add slides after you start presenting, they don't show up either. So I don't know how they managed to pull that
I
off.
have no idea. This is like hot module replacement in production.
Yeah. So that does kind of wrap up the features that we wanted to talk about in terms of performance improvements that we've been working on and will be working on. And let's talk a little bit about the developer experience features we've got here. So we are going to start here by signals. Again, that's right. We put it in here twice. We talked about signals earlier as a means of helping you build more performant applications by narrowing the situations that could lead Angular to do change detection, reduce the amount of work that the framework does. But we also see signals as a major improvement to Angular's overall developer experience.
And we can tell that the community was excited about it as well. We shared a request for comment as a GitHub discussion and received over 1,000 comments out there. And, well, we got some awesome feedback for which we're really grateful.
Yeah, and some strong opinions, right? Some thoughts about naming. But overall, we saw a very clear and positive reception to the idea of introducing a fine-grained reactivity model into Angular. Our 3 signal primitives, signal, computed, and effect, are in developer right now as of Angular version 16. And I have been using them on a project. And I will tell you, it's really good. The computed API especially is like hits just right, and once you start using it, you really just keep reaching for it. And seeing signals in action, I've experienced firsthand the conceptual simplicity that tracking your state in signals brings, and I've found it to be much simpler to reason about than zone-based change detection.
What I love about signals is that they're also a familiar concept. If you're not an Angular developer, there is a high chance that you have used signals already in frameworks such as Solid or Preact. So once you learn signals, you also have more transferable skill set.
Yeah, and we know that we are part of a much bigger, broader, diverse web ecosystem, which is why it's so important for us that signals are great for interoperability. It's super straightforward to plug Angular signals into another reactivity model and vice versa.
Yeah, so one of our goals with signals is to make the RxJS integration better than it has ever been. The new RxJS interop package provides utilities that make it easy for you to customize your reactivity model.
Yeah, so this is the last we'll kind of talk about signals during this keynote, but make sure you check out Emma and Alex's talk at noon today, Superpowers with Signals.
And from the intro, you know that I have special feelings for standalone components, right? Well, going beyond signals, we have been also working hard to polish the standalone component experience so that we can make it eventually the default one. With the new schematic utilities that we have to make it easier to build schematics for standalone components, and also ng-new and ng-generate schematics that allow you to generate new applications as standalone and also convert existing ones. Plus improved server-side rendering plus standalone story. One of my favorite features is this ng-generate schematic that will automatically convert your components, directives, and pipes to standalone.
Yeah, and I'll editorialize a little bit here to say that this tool is really surprisingly good, sometimes shockingly good. Not only does it update those imports from your ng modules and moves them over to standalone, but it also can go and update your application's bootstrap to change it over to the standalone bootstrap, which is what we're showing here on the slide, and it can also clean up any unnecessary ng modules when it's done. And I don't know about you, but I would certainly like more tools that are deleting code for me.
I definitely love deleting code. Well, on top of all these big changes, we have been also working on a steady stream of new quality of life improvements. Each one might seem just like a small step forward, but they taken together, they holistically provide a better Angular developer experience. And all of them are based on GitHub feature requests by developers. Collectively, they have over 2,500 thumbs up only in version 16.
Yeah. If they were real human thumbs up, lengthwise, they would be a bit longer than 3 Olympic-sized swimming pools. So, you know, think about that the next time you're upvoting a GitHub issue, your contribution to the next swimming pool.
So, Jeremy, I know you love the directive composition API.
Yes, this is actually one of my favorite features. I've wanted it for a long time. Directive composition API, or you may call it host directives. It lets you compose directives onto the host element of a component without needing to use inheritance or without needing to use a complicated mix-in system. And this was made possible by the standalone components by having directives that are not requiring to be related to an ng module. And in this example here, we are showing off how you can use these host directives, this directive composition API, to apply a menu interaction pattern onto a component so you don't have to reinvent any of that work and get to still define the look and feel of that component yourself and totally curate its APIs to your liking. We have also introduced required inputs to Angular components. This allows you to mark an input as strictly required, which will make Angular throw an error if someone tries to use that component without providing a value for that input.
And Jeremy, how much is this going to add to my JavaScript bundle?
This feature adds 0 bytes to your JavaScript bundle size because, thanks to Angular's compiler, we're able to enforce it entirely at build time.
Oh, I love compilers.
Yes. And speaking of the compiler, another benefit that the compiler brings us is our powerful Angular language service that is living inside of your IDE, giving you lots of useful hints and tips. And the most recent feature we're very happy to push out is auto imports for directives, components, and pipes. So when you use one of those in your template, the IDE can helpfully bring in the import for you. We have also been working on router stuff. We have improved the router configuration to be more functional, smaller, and simpler to write. And this is part of our larger overall effort towards moving towards standalone as the default experience, making it more consistent there. Another really cool router feature is the ability of the router to now automatically bind data into matching component inputs, which can cut out a lot of boilerplate that we've seen across different Angular apps.
And I know one of the feature requests you opened, it added maybe about a quarter of a swimming pool worth of thumbs up.
Yeah, I think I originally opened this issue back in 2016, or maybe my third ng-conf. And this enables support for the strictest setting for the style source CSP, which stands for Content Security Policy setting. So for those of you who need to have very strict compliance or conformance checks for your applications, this lets you get that strictest level of this, which has been a highly demanded feature for a long time.
So on the tooling side, one of the favorite features that we graduated from experimental and it is now in developer preview is our ES-Build base builder. We're also using vdare for ng-serve, specifically for your dev server, and we're doing the building with ES-Build together with some custom orchestration that we're doing on the CLI side. We tested this new developer preview build with some applications by GDs, and we saw improvements of over 2.5 times for some of them for production builds.
Yeah, and last but not least, we know developers have wanted more options for running their tests. So in version 16, we've added experimental support for Jest in Angular CLI. Expect to see more progress on this as that experiment evolves. And we're also working towards swapping out Karma for a somewhat better supported test runner called Web Test Runner that will be a no-op for the vast majority of developers. Stay tuned for more about this in a later release. And Alex,
hey guys, how's it going?
We already did the interruption bit with Jessica before.
Yeah, I know. But like, we saw her presentation, and then you were talking about developer experience and opportunities to improve developer experience, and we had some ideas. So we went and wrote another RFC. I'm just gonna go and like
just in the last 5 minutes.
So yeah, you wrote an RFC.
So I wrote it, or Bard wrote it, or I don't know.
Yeah, and you get. Okay.
He's built with Angular though, so he knows what's up.
Yeah, and you got the text to mic you up for this.
Yeah. And I might have put some slides in too. So.
Okay, for sure.
Yeah, we just published a second RFC. We've been looking at control flow in Angular, so conditionals like switch statements, loops, etc. And in the feedback we've collected over the last few years, we've seen that the developer experience of our existing ngIf, ng-for structural directives has some weak points. The microsyntax that they use is powerful, but it's fairly unintuitive, especially for a new developer kind of coming to the framework for the first time and trying to learn a bunch of concepts at once. And the fact that these directives have to go on template elements also has some limitations. I don't know about you, but writing else in ngIf always feels like very awkward to me. And then like a long requested feature is type checking for the ng switch statement. That's been hard for us to do because of the like multiple directive nature of ng-switch. So this new RFC explores the idea of taking ngIf and ng-for, et cetera, that we love, and putting them directly into the framework with an enhanced syntax. And so it looks something like this. Here's kind of our proposal of what ngIf could look like if it was built into Angular itself. A major design goal here was a syntax that would actually look kind of more like JavaScript and TypeScript itself. It should feel intuitive and natural, even if you're not familiar with kind of Angular itself. If this looks familiar, it's because we've drawn a lot of inspiration from other frameworks. This is very similar to how Svelte works. It's also inspired by mustache templates, which actually were one of the original inspirations for Angular JS syntax, so we're kind of full circle in a way. And you can see here we have natural support for else. This is not nearly as awkward as ng-if with another template. And we can have an else if in the middle. Surprise, it's 2023. Let's have real control flow. And type narrowing will work perfectly here, as well as for the equivalent kind of switch case, which you can imagine looks very similar. So here's what ng-4 might look like. Quick survey. How many people remember the order of arguments for a track-by function? Yeah, notice we don't have our hands up.
Oh.
Even, like, I can't keep track of this stuff. And the reason track-by works the way it does is because that's how you would have to implement it with the structural directive approach that we have. If we build ng-4 into the framework, we can offer a much better developer experience. So in this version, you just name the property or expression you want to track for each row, and Angular takes care of the rest. So we can improve this experience. This wasn't really possible before. And we can do other cool things too, like an empty template, which renders when the list has no items in it. So we're still experimenting with this block syntax and what we can do with it. You saw Jessica talk earlier about our deferred loading syntax with the defer block. We've been thinking about doing that for a while. It's been on our roadmap as component level or template level lazy loading. And when we put that together with this idea for control flow syntax, we realized, oh, this is we'd love this developer experience. So please go check out the RFC, give us your thoughts, your comments. We're open to suggestions if you have alternative ideas for the syntax. This is not set in stone yet. So start filling our swimming pool with thumbs ups and thumbs downs. And, anyway, I've taken up enough of your time. Back to Jeremy and Minko. Thank you very much. Take care.
How unprofessional. These interruptions. All right, so that about wraps up, really, the developer experience things we wanted to talk about, right? Capping off with this new surprise control flow syntax. So just kind of recapping what we talked about today. We covered all of the features that we have been working on over the past year or so and going into the future, things that are going to improve the performance and developer experience of Angular apps. We talked about signals and how they are going to make change detection a bit easier, a bit faster, open the doors there, server-side rendering, hydration.
Yeah, we also talked about ES builds and how we're going to make production and developer builds faster. But also, we would like to be clear that stability and reliability, they are in the core of every single decision we make for Angular. We want to provide smooth adoption path, which is also from a really high priority. We're committed to deliver new, small, and large features in just a backward-compatible and incremental way via automation with the ng-update command. And additionally, we're constantly refining our processes for releasing and also browser support.
Yeah, and we are always evolving the framework, right? We're actively working on it all the time. And our approach is to try to always measure, improve, and iterate. Measure, improve, and iterate, so that we can make sure that we are solving real developer problems, real application problems, and setting realistic goals for what we can accomplish on those problems. We started off by celebrating the fact that this is the 10-year anniversary of ng-conf. We are doing everything we can to smoothly streamline the update process and evolve the framework so that not just Angular evolves over time, but the entire Angular ecosystem can keep going along, and we can come back in another 10 years here for ng-conf, and you can hear us talk about Angular version 36.
Thank you all so much, and looking forward to chatting with you over the next couple of days.